What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Site Visit. Back in Rhode Island today. I'm in the basement. Last week this was all stone, and for the last couple of days Brian has been working with the concrete guys, getting this prepped for concrete. They placed the concrete yesterday. Let's just walk through kind of what we had here. So we had crushed stone spread throughout the entirety of the basement. Really important to get that really flat and really level, because on top of that we installed 2 layers of rockwool comfort board. Now, a lot of you guys have been asking on Instagram, isn't it going to compress? Are you concerned with it compressing? Is it designed for below slab? The answer is no, we're not worried about compressing. While it will compress slightly, it is actually pretty dense, and it is designed to be used below slab, below grade, all of those things that we're concerned with. Now, 2 layers of it to create that thermal separation from our concrete slab as well as the ground. And then on top of that, we're installing a 15 mil vapor barrier. And that vapor barrier is on top. I mentioned it on my Instagram post. Steve Basic, it was a detail he had mentioned to me many years ago about putting it on top of your insulation, so when you're placing that concrete, your insulation is not floating all over the place. So that 15 mil vapor barrier is actually ran up the wall. You can see it here. It's taped to our foundation wall at this point. Another detail, you can actually see the rockwool insulation. We use the thinner 1.5 inch stuff up against the foundation wall to separate our slab from our foundation wall, our stem wall, things like that, to create further thermal break. Now, it's taped to the wall right now, and that's just to get that barrier up into above slab. And then from there, we're going to actually tie this to our vapor retarder, which will be a Siga product that we're going to run against our concrete wall all the way up top, and we'll tie it into our sill. Now, if you guys remember, our sill has multiple layers of acoustical caulking as well as the sill seal, and what that's going to do is continue our barrier from under the slab, up the foundation wall, through to the front of the building, and then we'll tie that into our Siga WRB, up over the roof, etc., etc. That gives us our continuous control layer around the entire home. And if you guys are in the building industry or building science, the pen test, meaning if you can draw a line all the way around the building without lifting your pen, you know that you have a continuous control layer around. So a couple other things. The plumber was on site, got all our below slab. They installed this rubber around the PVC. That way this is separated. We made sure we detailed the tape around that. Everything is left high right now. We'll cut that flush as necessary. We have a clean out here that will be cut flush so we can access that. We have some floor drains in our mechanical areas. Over here, I wanted to call attention, you see a bunch of water drops, and if you look up, the metal deck is actually pretty wet. And what's going on here is that the concrete was placed yesterday. We had heaters in here in the morning getting the place comfortable, basically prior to concrete being set up. Once the concrete was in place and it starts curing, it actually emits a lot of heat. And what that was doing is that heat was coming up and hitting our freezing cold deck above, and that freezing cold deck, you see, now has condensation on the bottom of it. We stepped down into this area. If you guys remember, this is actually our envelope of our home. So this will be technically an exterior door breaking the envelope, and this right here becomes a mudroom, so you can access it through this door to the backyard, and then we open into our workshop. And this workshop has a great window looking over the Providence River. And another detail that we made sure we got in pre-slab was our floor outlets. So the electrician was on site. He got those located, and those are all prepped. Conduit runs over. This vertical right here ends up in our wall. A lot of coordination. Big shout out to Brian, working through all these details with our concrete guy and the guys over at Minkin Construction, Matt and his team, for taking the time to make sure to work through the details with us. It's really important that we partner with trade partners that value what we're doing and understand what we're doing to be able to hit and nail the details for the ultimate performance of this home. Let's go upstairs. So you can see our whole roof is framed at this point. It's a single-story home. All of our rafters are landing on top. Going back to the advanced framing details, so our studs are 24 inches on center, our rafters are 24 inches on center, and they're stacked above our stud, which is stacked above our floor system. I'm going to talk about that a lot because that's how we're reducing the amount of lumber, how we're transferring the load from the roof down to our wall, into our floor system, and not relying on more lumber or doubled up top plates or multiple packed studs at window locations, things like that. Now, another detail you're going to see Matt Reisinger calls it the Monopoly house, but that exterior wall goes up. The roof is actually flush cut with our exterior wall. That gives us the opportunity to run that detail. That sill seal underneath our sill connects to our inside vapor retarder, and then we're gonna come down with our sheathing as well as our Siga, and then we'll tape down to here, so that transfers our control layer up the wall. But then as you go up, we can tie it into the roof rather than working with the overhangs or detailing it around the overhangs. Now, we do have to work with one of the overhangs, and that's what you're seeing back there. You see our steel beam sticking out. It's catching the end of this LVL, which is then tied back to our steel post underneath our ridge. But then we have that really big 4-foot overhang. It's a really dramatic view. If you guys have seen the rendering, this view right here looks like an enormous overhang, but what you're actually seeing is a double 4-foot overhang, meaning it's 4 feet in both directions. So our control layer is actually going to go up and over the roof, down that overhang, and then wrap down the face of the fascia, and then underneath the soffit, and then tie back into the vertical of the wall. So that's the only area that we're dealing with the overhang. Everywhere else, these overhangs are actually going to be installed after the fact. Let's go inside. As we walk around the front too, you can see how our windows are shaping up and how close they are to the roof line. There's a lot of details with what is going on, from location of windows and how that ties into not only the exterior but the interior. But let's talk about the exterior for a moment. Obviously I have our sheathing, then we have our Siga WRB, and this comes down. This is a really important detail. It stops at the bottom of our sheathing. We're going to deal with that same detail at our outside corners and our inside corners. We're not going to want to take that product and wrap it, and we're certainly not going to want to run that product in the corner and then stretch it around the inside corner. You're going to stop at every time it changes direction or plane, and then you're going to use the tape to bridge the different planes. So you can actually see here our Siga tape going from our foundation waterproofing up over the top of the foundation and then tying into this. And then on top of this, we're going to actually have our first layer of rockwool comfort board, and then our second layer of rockwool comfort board, which will plane out with the insulation on the foundation, and we'll have a continuous plane all the way up. And on top of that, we'll actually have a second layer of plywood. And then on that plywood, that's where we'll have our bulk water, but also our rain screen prior to our cedar shingles. Now the windows, they're not going to be set all the way in from the face of the wall, but they'll be somewhere about in the middle. So we will have exterior jambs that our cedar shingle will come around and actually be woven back into the face of the window, and we'll have a sheet metal pan that matches the material of the window. But let's go inside. I want to show you those headers before we wrap up here. You can see that we have a single plate on the bottom, single studs on either side, again reducing that amount of lumber. And then above, I had mentioned that they were LVL headers, and I actually misspoke. It's just a dimensional 2x piece of lumber that sits across the top plate and then bridges these two studs. And that's all we need to satisfy structural and make sure we have the carrying ability for everything above that. And you can see that's consistent across every single window. And the reality is you see all of our stud framing lining up. Looks like this one's slightly off. It's carrying about half of it. It's probably due to a spacing constraint where that needs to be at 24-inch on center, and the window location is probably slightly off from what that looks like. But we do have our header above that is helping carry all of that weight. Now, most of the rafters on this side are dimensional 2x lumber, and we have a couple LVLs on that side, which will actually frame out the triple skylight. Really cool detail in the finish, because two of those skylights actually create this tunnel for the main living space, and then one of those skylights lead into the primary bedroom hallway. So a lot of intricate details now in order for us to hit those details later on, especially being that all of this stuff gets plastered in, very thoughtfully designed. And on this side, all of our rafters are actually LSL. So we have a much larger span. So these are the LSL rafters coming all the way down, capturing our 4-foot overhang, and this will be vaulted pretty much throughout the entire space. Where I'm standing here is actually a kitchen, which will be our kitchen wall. We're going to be working with Materia on this kitchen design. We're actually already starting the design, and once this wall is framed, we'll actually get on site to have them start their shop drawings. But we also have another corner unit here, which our countertop will actually run into, and we get that view of this side of the Providence River. You know, there's a lot of tricky details here, and we talked about possibly panelizing this house, and at this point now we're stick framing the entire thing almost wall by wall, But there's a lot of intricate details, and if you look up here, we have this doubled up LVL rafter that runs on the main roof that goes up to our tripled up LVL ridge, and then we have this triple ridge here for the lower section that's hung off of that LVL. So a big thanks to the guys over at Hayes O'Neill. They've been working with Julia, the architect, and us to make sure that structurally this works, but also thinking about things more creatively, making sure that we aren't just going for the easiest opportunities. We are looking for ways to be creative and to be more structurally sound. Guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Site Visit. Excited to see this project progress, and we're going to be getting into another project here soon. Actually, 2 more projects that we're going to start sharing, but we'll be back here next week, and we'll see you guys then. You'd think it would be faster than that. It's probably not going to stop. Oh, okay.